Hey everybody, it's Todd Brannon and I am the Accidental Excelist. In this video we're going to look at the index function, we're going to look at the match function, and then we're going to look at how to combine both of those or nest the match function within the index function to create a very powerful and flexible lookup formula. Some might refer to it as the VLOOKUP killer. I used to refer to it as that. It's really not. I actually still use the VLOOKUP in some cases. There are some simple cases where the VLOOKUP is actually pretty simple. However, one of the main limitations of the VLOOKUP, if you don't know or you're not aware of, is that you can only look up to the right, which means your lookup column has to be the first column, the column on the far left. With the index and match function combined, or I should say the match function nested within an index function, you have more flexibility and you can look up in either direction. So you're going to learn that in this video if you stick around. Hang out for a few minutes. I'm going to work through the building blocks, the index function and the match function on their own, and then we'll combine those. So without further ado, I'll shut up and get to the point here. So first things first, actually, let me go over here to the match function. Let's look at this first. So you can see here, the match function actually returns a numeric value from an array based on a lookup value that you insert into the formula. And if that's confusing, don't worry about it. So here's the actual formula. Here's what the formula looks like. This is the basic syntax. So it's a formula, so we start with an equal sign. It's match, that's the function. And then there are three arguments within the match formula that we have to address. One of these is actually an optional argument as denoted by these square brackets, but we're still going to use that. The first argument is the lookup value. So let's say we have this array here. See over here, lookup array, we have this array of colors. We've just got 5 actual rows of color values. And let's say we want to look up and find out what row does, let's say, pink fall on. Now that's really easy to eyeball with this, so it's a very simple example, but all that aside, what can we do, or how can we get Excel to tell us what row some value falls on, or falls on within that column or this array? So the lookup value is going to be in this case, is going to be our color, which is going to be a string value. And then the lookup array, which is the second argument, is the actual range that we want to choose as our array. In this case, it's just going to be cell A2 through cell A6. And so then we want to address the match type, which I'll show you here in just a minute. We want an exact match, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's go up here to cell C2. In our first formula, we've got match, of course, looks just like this, but our lookup value is the string value blue, and we have to put it in double quotes since it's a string value. We're dealing with string values in our array. And then the second argument, if I click into that, you can see it's highlighted in blue already, A2 through A6, and then it's in bold here showing us that's the lookup array. And then after that, comma, we have our third argument here is our match type, and you've got three options for the match type. If I backspace here, you'll see those, and you can either put a positive one, a 0, or a negative one. You can see here what they correspond to. In this particular case, we're just choosing 0 because we want an exact match. And if I were to double click that or just put a 0 in there, I'll get that. So this is going to tell us, well, what row within that array from A2 to A6 does blue fall on? So if I hit enter, it tells us it falls on row 3. Well, you look here, blue, it says, well, that's column 4. Well, we're not talking about the Excel grid. We're talking about the actual row within that chosen array. And if we start at A2, that's row 1, row 2, and row 3, which is where blue is, and that's what we get. So not only can we input a literal value for our lookup value, we can use a cell reference. And so that's what we've done in this variation of the formula. All I've done is replace that string value with cell E5, which contains those string values. So let's say you want to be able to key in a color that you're looking for in this cell, and we can type in blue, and this formula will adapt to that, and sure enough it'll be on row 3. And then we can choose red if we like, And this formula will change accordingly because it's referring to that cell reference. So this gives us a number. This gives us a row number. But wait, it's not all about rows, because you can use the match function to actually give you a column number as well. So look at this example here where I have a single row on row 18, and I've got January through December going across from column A to column 11. So in this particular case, my match function, my lookup is going to be this cell reference where you can put in the month name. But my lookup array is actually going to be cell A18 through L18, so it's a single row of multiple columns, and then of course I want it to be an exact match. So with that, if I put in November, it gives me column number 11. If I put in, let's say, April, this is going to adapt. It's going to give me column 4. So this is really important because this is a case where, and I'm going to show you in just a minute, the index formula allows you to not just supply an argument for your row number, but if you have a multiple or a multi-dimensional array, so you have multiple rows and multiple columns, you can actually supply a column number as well. So that index formula would actually supply or actually return the value that is the intersection of the row number and the column number. So with that said, let's jump over here to index and let's find out really what that means. So here's the index formula, the syntax, and the index returns a value from an array based on the row number you insert into the formula. I actually should have worded that where it says it's based on the row number and the column number you insert into the formula depending on your array. So in this particular case, we just have a single column, so it's just a one-dimensional array, if you will. So we're not going to worry about column number just yet. We'll look at that here in a minute, but not just yet. So in order to get the index formula to return the value that we want, it's based on us supplying the row number that we want it to pull that value from. So in this particular case, just like the match example, I'm using the same data set. Now I need it to pull, say I want it to pull the value from row 4. It's going to pull in that value, which is pink. And look here, so we've got our index formula here. This is our array, A2 through A6, just like before. And then we're going to supply it with a literal value of 4, and that's going to give us the pink. So if I were to change that to, say row 1, it'll give me the value of red. And same here, I'm using a cell reference just like I did in the match example. It's cell E5, and then I can make those changes in that cell. And instead of having to do it in the actual formula itself, I leave that alone, and then I just supply the row number I want in this cell, and it automatically updates. So now that you've seen how the index formula and the match formulas work on their own, we've created the building blocks for our lookup formula that we want to leverage the power of match and nest that within the index formula to give us a row number. So let's check this out. So let's go over here to this index and match tab. And so what we've got here now, we've got 2 columns. And let's say what we're trying to do is we want to look up, based on a code that we supply, we want to look up what color does that correspond to. So 101-5 corresponds to red, 101-1 corresponds to orange, and so on in between. So it's 2-dimensional here, so you could use a VLOOKUP very easy, right? Because if you want to just look up the code, you can use a VLOOKUP, choose this entire array here, and just say, I need you to pull from column 2 where you have a match for this code. Well, how do you do this with index and match? Well, let's see. So this first column, the code column, is going to be the lookup array for our match function. So we want to find out, okay, well, what row is the code 101-9 on? Well, here's our match formula. So we're going to use match. We're going to match it to the lookup value here in this code column, and then our array is going to be, our lookup array is going to be A2 through A6. That's where we're looking for that code. And of course, match is going to tell us what row does 101-9 live on, or whatever, right? So it's going to tell us, well, that's on row 4. So over here in the column for color, column F, I can put an index formula, And just like we've done before, we know how to use cell references in place of these arguments. And so that's what I'm going to do in this case. I've already got the match function giving me my row number, so I'm going to use that row number in my index function for my row number argument, and that's in cell E2. Well, if I can do that, then I can replace this cell reference with the actual formula in the row column. So let me escape out of that. That's actually what I've done here in this version of the formula. So here's what I've done. I've got my index formula, and my index array is essentially my results array. So that's where my result is coming from. So notice here, this box, the array for index is the array or the column that we're pulling the result from, and that's our colors column. So that comes first. That might be a little counterintuitive. That might be a little counterintuitive based on what you're used to. But then we go over here, and now we need a row number. So all I've got to do is basically substitute in the match function that's going to give us the row number based on the value in D5 from the lookup array, which is our column, or A2 through A6. Sorry, not column A, but the actual range A2 through A6. So what I've done is I've nested that match function or formula that gives us a row number within the index formula that requires the row number in that argument. And now I've made this lookup that gives us the exact same results we would get from a VLOOKUP. Now, easy enough, because if you know or you use the VLOOKUP, you're used to looking up from the left to the right. So let's jump over here to this tab. And now we're going to look up, well, or we're going to look at how do we look up from the right to the left. Well, it's actually pretty easy with the index and match function combined into one formula, because think about something. So when we started, we looked at, well, how do you use the match formula or function? What does it do? Well, it gives you back this value. It gives you this row number. Okay, well, what about the index function? Well, it gives you a value based on a row number. You supply it just like a VLOOKUP or something, but you've got to give it that row number. You've got to know what the row number is. Well, the match formula will find the row number based on the value you're looking up, much like VLOOKUP finds a value, and if you give it the column, it'll find that row and it'll bring it back from whatever column you tell it. So in this case, you know, there are two independent formulas that do their own thing, and that's really the power of this. So that removes that limitation of which direction you're forced to look up. So let's look at it. I know that it's a lot of theory or whatever, but so let's look at this. So we have our code column again, we have our colors column. In this case, what I want to do is create a lookup that allows me to select a color, and then it returns the code that corresponds to that color. Well, we can see that's to the left of the lookup column, but we can make it work with index and match. So again, this array here, this is going to be now our index array, and this is going to be where we're pulling the result from. We're pulling it from the code column, and in this case, this is now our lookup array for the match formula that's going to give us the row number on which the color is found. Okay, so let's go up here. Let's go up to this row cell here, and this is our match formula. This is our basic match formula. So again, our lookup value is in this cell D2. In this case, it's an actual color value. And so now we want to find the row number on which this color is in the array that's in B2 through B6. So now our lookup array is on this right side, which is fine. We're okay, no problem. And then I'm going to set up my index function to pull the results from column A, which is the code column. That's what I want. I want to find the code number that corresponds to the color. And so then I just substitute in the cell reference E2 here, whatever the row number result is of that match formula based on this red value in this color cell being pulled from the colors column. So that works, and it gives me the code 101-5 for red. And sure enough, that's right. So if I were to change that to, pink or whatever, now that's going to work. 101-9. So you've now created a lookup that looks up to the left. And we can do what we did with the first index and match example. We can now substitute that cell reference where our row is and just substitute in the match formula for the row number argument in our index formula. And now we've got this great lookup that is directionally agnostic, if you will. It's not like the VLOOKUP. Your lookup column does not have to be in any particular position within the array of data that you're trying to pull data from. So now you know index and match. If you nest that match within the index for your row number, you can now use that in place of a VLOOKUP, and you don't have to ever worry about, well, where's my result column, where's my lookup column. You don't have to worry about it. So cool. So there you go. So to kind of wrap this up, let's go over here and look at this comparison. So I've got two tables here. I've got one for the VLOOKUP and one for index and match, and I've used both just as a comparison. This is all being pulled from this customer order data tab. And so I've highlighted the columns that we're working with for our VLOOKUP, our lookup columns, or our lookup arrays, in each, the VLOOKUP and then the index and match. And so we've got this order number column, which this is a perfect scenario for a VLOOKUP because it's the leftmost column and everything you need to look up is to the right. So it's, it's that perfect scenario where even for me, I love to use the index and match, and I believe in it as a more powerful lookup formula than the VLOOKUP. But in this particular scenario, VLOOKUP is so simple and I'm so used to using it, I would use VLOOKUP in this case. However, if I want to pull something by invoice number, if it's anything else besides the order amount, I have to use an index match formula unless I want to just manipulate this whole table and I want to, insert a column here in A and then move the invoice number over to the far left. That's just not very efficient, very conducive to, being, efficient and effective in your analysis or whatever you're doing. So let's go back over here and let's take a look at the comparison. So we've got order number, and in this case, I can pull in customer, phone, and invoice number. And if you know anything about VLOOKUP, you know what you're looking at here. So we've just, using this value, C10 is our lookup value. Then our table array is the entire table here. I've just taken, A through G, and then I just select the columns necessary. If I want, customer name, it's going to be column 2. If I want phone, it's going to be column 5. Invoice number is column 6. Easy enough, no problem, because everything is to the right of the order number. So if I change this, I've got a drop down here, I can change this. It's a great lookup. Everything's automatic. In this particular case, though, I've got invoice number, so I can't do that. So there's only one item that's to the right, but all of these are now an index and match formula. So I can go in here and I can say, well, my results column is column B because that's the column that customer is in. And then I need to match that to my invoice number, which is going to be column F. So that's what I've got to pay attention to now, is just which column is my lookup column and which column is my results column. I don't have to worry about column number, things like that. So you can just see the difference here based on, whatever the scenario is. There's this scenario here is perfect for the VLOOKUP. This scenario is not, but this is how you get around it. You learned how to use the index and match combination where the match just gets nested within your index formula, substituting for the row number. So I hope this helps you. I hope you kind of got a handle on this. Please like and subscribe. Please leave a comment, and I'll actually leave a link. I will actually leave a link to where you can actually download this workbook so you can take this and take a look at it and look at the formulas and try to, chew on this a little bit more and really learn this, because I think it's very powerful, and wish you the best on that. So thanks a lot for watching. Thanks everybody for watching. Please take a minute to like and subscribe, and be sure to check us out at theaccidentalexcellist.com.